Nation of Fit in 10, welcome to day 56, and this means we've got 14 days to go. We've got 2 weeks to go. We've got 20% of the challenge. So if you think about it, 20%, that's still a lot, right? So a lot can happen over 2 weeks. Of course, I mentioned, I think it was yesterday, about the average percentage loss. It's always between 18 and 19%. Somebody wanted to know how they're doing relative to others. And I don't want to reveal that, but I will tell you that on average it's between 18 and 19%. When it comes to these final 2 weeks, obviously they're going to hold a little more weight because there's a whole host of reasons. You're maybe doing a little more cardio. You're more in tune with how to perform movements and how to push yourself. You're more in tune with the cardio. You're more in tune with your diet. So conceivably, we could get more results here in the last 2 weeks than what we would otherwise say in the first 2 weeks. But putting all that aside, 2 weeks, you can still make a lot of change. And on average, throughout all the challenges, it's about a 10 pound. The average fat mass loss for the challenge is 10 pounds, okay, or thereabouts, okay, 10 plus or minus half a pound. So you put that over 2 weeks, that's 2 pounds. All right, and you may think 2 pounds of fat is not very much, and that's just the average, by the way. I'm not saying this is what you're gonna get. There are plenty of people who are above the average. But even if it's just 2 pounds, that's still a lot of butter. If you put 2 pounds of butter in front of you, that's a lot of body fat. And that just goes to show you how much every day counts. There's 16 ounces there's 16 ounces in a pound. In 2 pounds, we're talking about 32 ounces. So every single day, we're losing 2+ ounces of pure fat every single day at that rate. That's a lot, okay? Now, reminder, if you slip, if you fall behind, if you've had a bad day or a bad couple days, this has no bearing on what you can do in the future. And I want to remind you that those who are successful in whatever endeavor they do, they are those who play the long game. They stay at they keep working towards that goal, or they stay at what they had their eyes set on in the beginning, and they keep going. And when it comes to body composition, this is an all the time game. This is an everyday game. This is a life game. All right. So as I mentioned, I know I mentioned this in the beginning. I do every challenge. You are just a reflection of your recent past. Okay, especially when it comes to body composition. So you can't expect to do something magical and then maintain it afterwards doing something totally different. No, it's all about maintenance. It's all about maintaining what you did, okay? Now, this doesn't mean, and I'll talk about this more as we get into the exit strategy. I'll talk about more of the exit strategy in future videos coming up here. But what I wanted to say here is you don't have to do, obviously, to the extreme of what we're doing in this challenge, which isn't that extreme, I don't think, but maybe measuring the food is for you. But the point is applying the bigger picture to your life, okay? And we'll talk about what the particulars are in this bigger picture, but I think you know them, okay? And we'll get into more detail beyond doing some cardio, doing some weights, and monitoring your food intake, or being aware of what you're eating. All right, so some questions here as I babble on here. Questions. Okay, so the other day there was a question about what are sugar alcohols. So this person asked this question again a couple weeks later, and they added more questions to it. So I already went through what sugar alcohols are. Sugar alcohol is basically sugar with added hydroxyl groups. Okay, what does that mean? It just means that there's some stuff added to it. Just think of it that way. Okay, there's some alcohol groups. That's exactly what they would be considered in chemistry. They're alcohol groups that have been added to the glucose molecule or molecules very similar to glucose. And this is what gives them their sweet flavor. This is why because it's so similar to glucose, we get that sweetness on the tongue. And this person went on to ask some more questions. So next question is the following. How do different sweeteners affect glucose insulin response when they don't contain any actual sugar? All right, well, they do, and there is, as I just mentioned, there is some glucose there, and some of that will break down and get into the bloodstream, but it's a much slower process, and not all of it gets into the bloodstream. And typically we don't use a lot of sugar alcohols, period. So the total net effect is very, very minimal. The fact that they're not fully digestible, okay, some of it's just bypassing and going directly to your intestinal tract, your large intestine. So there's that aspect. There's the aspect that they digest much slower. They have 50% basically entry relative to glucose. They're 50% as fast entering the bloodstream, and of course they have a much lower energy threshold. Right? They are half on average. They are half unless if you're talking about something like erythritol, it's whatever that works out to be 5% of what 1 gram of carbohydrate contains in terms of calories. Okay, so yeah, it is dependent on the type of sugar alcohol that you have, whether it's sorbitol or erythritol or whatever. So there's just not as much bang for your buck. Plus, that bang does not fully happen, right? Some of it goes through you. Plus, it enters the bloodstream much slower. Okay, so this is why we don't get that insulin response, or not nearly to the same degree that insulin response. Insulin response is also related to the dose, right? Which I already just mentioned that a second ago, but I didn't say that exactly. When you have sugar alcohols, you're not going to have that much. It's just the way it is. They can't put too much sugar alcohol in there unless you just happen to have a whack load of diabetic candy, but you're going to feel sick. So therefore, the load is very small too. So you've got a small load. It enters very slow into the bloodstream. It doesn't all digest, etc. Right? So very minimal insulin response, if any at all. What's the difference between natural and artificial sweeteners? Well, one is naturally, when they say natural, it's naturally derived, okay? So it might be something like stevia, okay? So stevia is something that's naturally derived, but fruits have sugar alcohol, so it could be derived from a fruit, but I don't think it is. What is the difference between, let's take erythritol, okay? I keep bringing that one up, but it's a popular one. Let's take erythritol. What's the difference between erythritol if it's natural based? So you just take erythritol from your natural source and there's nothing else with it, and you have erythritol that's artificial. What's the difference? What is the difference? There is no difference. There's zero difference. They are exactly the same chemical structure. So as long as there's nothing else mixed in with that, they are exactly the same thing. There is no difference. Okay? When it becomes a difference is when there's stuff added to it. All right? So we talked about, for example, when we're trying to extract oil from seeds or whatever, there's a whole process that the seed has to go through, and there's all kinds of things that are added. There are all kinds of things that are added to that process, and it gets added into the oil, and then there's things like oxidation and things like hexane that are added, etc. So this makes the oil completely, for lack of better words, poisoned. Okay. There's stuff added to it. All right. So natural doesn't always mean good. All right. And artificial doesn't always mean bad. So just consider that. Okay. Why do some, almost 9 minutes here. Why do some sweeteners give people diarrhea? Okay. Because this is because some of those sugar alcohols go basically directly to your large intestine. And as a result, you're getting more solute. You're getting more, you could think of it as like a solid. You're getting more solid into your large intestine, and therefore the concentration of solid to water, essentially increases. So it's got to pull water in. There has to be a certain concentration. Okay, so it's going to pull water into the intestinal tract as a result. And if you get more water into the intestinal tract, you're going to have some diarrhea. So, this is just, this is what will happen if you have too much of it. Okay, so having a small amount or a moderate amount should be okay. When you have too much of it, you're just going to get too much water entering your large intestine. So, and yeah, you get diarrhea. So, okay, all right. Message of the day. Two things you can control easily, by the way: your effort and your attitude. Your effort and your attitude, and this will dictate many things in your life, really. And I'm sure a lot of you have probably thought about this, or maybe you haven't, I don't know. But life is everything that we approach or take on or attempt to succeed in. It's all about your effort and your attitude. It really is, right? More than anything. Okay, I mean, talent plays a part. Maybe your IQ has some part in it, but ultimately it's your effort and your attitude more than anything. So just a reminder, effort and attitude is, in my opinion, depending on what it is. I mean, obviously we can't be talking about like professional basketball here or something, but generally things in life, it's like 80%. So effort and attitude are your 80%. Just remember that. Okay? You have full control over those. All right, positive energy, positive vibes, believe in yourself, for the love of God, give some gratitude, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow. See you guys.